Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in this mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show, letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Audible, CastBox, Player FM. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Two really thought-provoking conversations today. First up, Nancy McCabe is here to speak about her middle grade novel. It's called Fires Burning Underground. Later in the show, we'll be welcoming Pamela Ehrenberg back to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate her new picture book. It's called The See You Soon Spice Box. Hey, my friends, here's something to think about. What if mistakes weren't something to fear, but something to celebrate? In It's Okay Not to Know by Brenda Doe, young readers meet Bink, a lovable little monster who worries they're not good enough when they struggle or make mistakes. But then, Bink discovers a powerful truth. Every uh-oh is an opportunity. Every question is a chance to grow. And every child deserves to know perfection isn't what makes you special. Curiosity, courage, and self-love do. A must-read for parents, teachers, and anyone who wants to help kids build resilience and confidence. Get your copy of It's Okay Not to Know by Brenda Doe today, because learning begins when we stop fearing the unknown. Hey, parents, grandparents, caregivers, and teachers, are you looking for a fun way to teach important values to your kids? Check out Timothy'sLessons.com.
It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. Teaching life lessons to his friends. It's Timothy's Lessons. Forward thinking activities. It's Timothy's Lessons. Building confidence and mental strength. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. Wonderful fun sing-along songs. It's Timothy's Lessons. Important lessons on key values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Children's books and uplifting stories. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values. It's Timothy's Lessons. Timothy's Lessons in good values.
Check it out today, Timothy'sLessons.com. Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. My friends, I am speaking to somebody who might have been in attendance at one of my magic shows years ago. Our guest is coming to us from Western Pennsylvania. She's here to celebrate her middle grade novel. It's called Fires Burning Underground. Please welcome to the show, Nancy McCabe. Nancy, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to have you on. What an intriguing title, Fires Burning Underground, especially for somebody living in Pennsylvania where there are fires burning underground.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. In Centralia, Pennsylvania, I believe it is.
Yeah. But this is not about that. This is about the fires that are burning inside a young teenager, correct?
Yeah. There are some literal fires in the book. The book opens with a fire that kills a kid that she's known like her whole life, a classmate from Sunday school. And so she's really dealing with, her first confrontation with the death of a peer. And then the book ends with a fire that happens next door to her, that has less, horrible consequences, but that, she's been throughout the book dealing with, trying to figure out, how do you process this death? But then there's a lot of stuff she's trying to process, a lot of stuff in her subconscious that's trying to break through. So, she imagines that her house, that her driveway covers up these fires that are burning underground and that the flames are going to burst through at some point. And that really is a metaphor for her emotional state and, her coming of age process.
Yeah. Boy, I think that can describe just about any young teenager. I think we forget how complicated those years can be.
Yeah, for sure. People have said to me, oh, there's so much that goes on in this book, but I'm like, it's not any more than was going on in my life when I was that age. I think we underestimate kids and what's going on in their lives and their heads.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, maybe partly due because we're, in some cases with teens who are so frustrated with they're reminding us every day how much they hate us, or on the other end of that, we're just blown away by the accomplishments this young person are making.
Yeah. I mean, and we do put a lot of pressure on kids anymore. I know that my daughter growing up, there was a whole lot more pressure on her from the outside world to be a perfect student and to be involved in all these things. And so, yeah, I think that there's so much that kids have to deal with and process. And yeah.
Yeah. So was this character based on anybody or a combination of people?
She was very much based on me when I was that age. A lot of the things that happened in the book actually were similar to things that happened to me, including the fires. I had a friend that was killed in a fire, and then there was a fire that happened next door to me. I changed a lot of the details. But definitely I had to work through a lot of, terror and grief and just, kind of the newness of dealing with death. That was the first time. But it's also based on, I had a really magical friendship. My first day of junior high, we first started talking to each other and became really good friends. And we did all sorts of creative activities. She was very interested in the supernatural and she wanted to play with the Ouija board. And that kind of scared me because I was from this very religious family. Uh-huh. And my mom was like, oh, that'll bring demons into our home. But I also thought it was kind of fascinating. And so I went along with it to an extent. And then sometimes was worried that I would contact the spirit of the boy who died. So a lot of the worries of that character, a lot of the concerns, a lot of her passions come from my own childhood self.
Wow. It's funny. I just had an acupuncture session, and at the end, the acupuncturist said, oh, I'm going to do something special for you. And she started burning the stuff and waving it around my knees. And I'm like, okay, we'll go. We'll go with this. I don't think any demons came into my knees at all. Actually, it felt pretty good. It's interesting. I've had occasion. I've shared on the show that I have a faith life and was raised Catholic and still attend a Catholic church and consider myself a Catholic. But there are lots of folks, and one of the things that I got as somebody who did magic for a living, I would every once in a while someone would confront me and say, you can't do that. That's, Jesus doesn't want you to do magic. And I say, well, in my church, we have a patron saint for magicians, so I think we're okay with it. there's so many people who are just closed off
Hmm.
to anything, to a lot of things that aren't mainstream, I guess I could say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I mean, my parents, the parents in my book are based on my parents to some extent.
Hmm.
My parents were very religious and could be maybe a little bit narrow about some things, but for the most part, I think compared to, I mean, I wonder what they would be like today because, the whole movement of like not being able to celebrate Halloween happened after my childhood. Or the protests against Harry Potter books,
Hmm.
those were all things that arose, much later
Hmm.
from the time that I experienced some of this stuff. But I wonder how my parents would have responded to those things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do remember. I did have a priest say no Harry Potter books. I'm like, dude, come on, man. That's actually what I said to him after I said, dude, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've even had people tell me that yoga is a way that will bring demons into your life, and if somebody saw me trying to do yoga, they might think I was possessed by a demon, but just because I'm old and I can't move very well.
Yeah. I mean, and when we tell really impressionable kids things like that, they might be more likely to believe them or at least have to grapple with them in a way that we don't because we maybe just sort of laugh and say, no,
Yeah,
that's not gonna,
yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think it also backfires on a lot of people because those kids grow up to be thinking adults, and they say, well, if you lied to me about that, what? You know?
And that is something that's happening to my character. I mean, she's like her mother's so worried about what's going to happen if she plays with the Ouija board, but nothing happens.
Mhm.
And so she's like, well, wait a minute, like I've always trusted everything that my parents said, but I'm not so sure right now. And so she is hitting that age where you start to maybe push back a little bit. And she doesn't quite know what to do with that either because that's new to her.
Yeah, yeah. Boy, yeah, that could be really scary and intimidating for a young teen who's always listened to my mom and my dad and did everything. But now I got this friend, and I kind of want to try some things.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the things I didn't say, and I do want to say it because even though it happened many years ago, I'm really sorry for your loss. That must have been
Oh,
horrific to have gone through that.
yeah. And the thing is that, nowadays, if a kid dies, the school, provides counselors.
Sure.
They assume that there's going to be some, emotional turmoil around that. And when I was a kid, that wasn't something that people really thought about. I mean, my parents kind of assumed that, oh yeah, she seems fine. So, and, and I think that nobody realized how much of an impression it had on me and how much I thought about that all the time. And it was somebody from my church. So people from my school didn't know the kid.
Mhm.
So it almost felt like the secret I had that I knew somebody who died,
Mm.
and so, I remember my parents went to the funeral, but I wasn't even, they didn't even ask me if I wanted to go because it just didn't occur to them,
Mhm.
because we didn't think about those things back then.
Yeah. Yes, I've mentioned on the show a lot. The first funeral that I had went to was my grandfather's, and I was 16, and I knew people went to wakes and went to funerals, but it wasn't something any of the kids in our neighborhood did. And in fact, one of our neighbors drowned when he was 4. And we heard these stories about what happened at the wake and the funeral, and there was a little teddy bear in the casket. But those were just rumors that we were, talking about ourselves. There were no parents sitting down with us and helping to process it other than stay away from the river.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm happy that it seems we've gotten over that and that we're talking to kids about these issues and about grief now.
Hmm. Yeah. I definitely think we've come a long way.
Was that one of the things that inspired you to write this book was, hoping that it could start conversations within families about these kind of issues?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Annie's grappling with a whole lot of issues. She's trying to deal with her, all of the complicated responses she has to the death. She's going to public school for the first time because she's been in a homeschooling family and has never done that. And her parents are a little bit nervous about what she's going to be exposed to. And so, that never happened to me, but I did, move from a very small rural elementary school to a much bigger junior high school, and felt a bit overwhelmed by that. So she's dealing with a lot of things, and she's dealing with identity questions. She's not sure if she's straight or gay or what, or how she identifies, because it feels like everybody else is maturing faster than she is, and she just doesn't feel the same way as they do. Mm-hmm. And so she's trying to process that too. And I wanted her to process that in an age appropriate way, but I don't think it's something that kids don't think about. I think it is something that concerns kids. So yeah, I think there's a lot of issues. I mean, I wrote the book with a light touch. I'm hoping there's a lot of humor, but it deals with some serious issues that I do hope will start conversations.
Yeah. I think, and we've talked about it here, I think one of the wonderful things about a middle grade novel like Fires Burning Underground is that it's like a key to open up a conversation. Sitting down, deciding, well, we're going to sit down and have a conversation about mental health today, my dear child. That's never going to happen, or it's never going to happen successfully. But to sit down and talk about Annie and the things that she's going through, as hopefully a parent and child will read this book together or mm-hmm. co-read it and talk about it on the way to school, around the dinner table. What kind of specific thing? Because I think this is a book that will just inspire many different conversations. Think of, please, some of the topics you think families might be able to get into.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that identity is a really big question. Like, who am I? How do I identify? How am I different from my parents? How am I embracing their values? How do I deal with these big life events? How do I talk about them? What does it mean, to identify in various ways? What does it mean, to have fulfilling relationships?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when they hear the word, how does it identify, they automatically just go back, oh, is the person gay or straight? But I think when we're kids, there's lots of things that kind of define our identity where, mm-hmm. My son was a football player. My daughter was a dancer, and my daughter was and that was how everybody looked at her. And I think it put a lot of pressure, and certainly a dancer with a dad that was making a living in the arts, there was a lot of pressure on her, assuming that she would go on stage. And she certainly had that ability. But it was really hard for her to talk about the fact that I don't want to do that. And she was able to talk to me about it, and I would hear these people around, she's going to be a great star, and I'm like in my head going, well, I think you might be surprised.
Yeah. I mean, that's another one of those pressures we put on kids, is to make everything into a career,
Yeah.
And one of the big identity questions that Annie's dealing with, I mean, she is dealing with questions around sexuality, but she's also dealing with the idea of, what part does creativity have in my life? I mean, as I transition from being a child to a young adult, like a lot of kids are leaving behind these creative impulses, but it's really a refuge. And Annie's not good at everything. Some things she's really, really bad at, but she is still really drawn to the creative arts and to, trying things out, even if she fails at them.
Yeah. I love that. I just finished, right before you and I sat down, Nancy, I finished an interview with an author illustrator, and that's one of the things that we talked about. He always thought of himself not necessarily an illustrator, but as a creative, as somebody mm-hmm. who loved making things and telling stories, drawing pictures. And I would love for us to get to the point as parents and caregivers and family friends, to get to the point where we really encourage that. Yes, it's not practical to think that you're going to make a living in the arts. It's very difficult, but you don't have to make a living in the arts. You can be a creator and have a day job. There's
Right.
nothing wrong with that.
Right. I mean, there's lots of ways that the arts can enrich our lives. And yet, you know, it always made me really sad that the kids I went to school with, who I thought were amazing artists or singers or, you know, musicians of other kinds or, you know, they all kind of left it behind as they grew up. And, you know, I think sometimes they still incorporate it into their lives in some way or another. But I've talked to a couple people that I thought were just incredible artists when we were growing up who were like, oh yeah, I don't really do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as they get older, they probably do embrace it in different ways. Like they do crafts in ways that I couldn't even imagine myself because I'm not at all artistic like that. But, you know, but it always kind of felt sad to me that we have these really inspiring activities that we kind of leave behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me, what is it about this middle grade audience that you enjoy writing for so much?
Well, so this is the first book I've written for a middle grade audience.
Okay.
I've written some books for adults. I've written a young adult novel. But this just felt like it had to be a middle grade because she's 12. And she's not, I mean, I've read in all different categories. I've read all different genres. You know, I think just being versatile in a lot of different genres gives you the tools for, like, sometimes genre just kind of chooses you. It's like, at first I thought the story was one thing and then I thought it was another. And then I'm like, you know, I'm really writing this for a middle grade audience. And so this is the first time I've done that. And I just felt like Annie and her friends, represented some things that were really important to me when I was those ages.
Okay. I'm curious, when you start a project, what do you sit down and say, I want to write a story about what I went through when I was 12 and 13? Or do you start on a story and, you know, and it just occurs to you that, you know what, Annie could be like me?
In this case, it really did start with me telling my story. I was writing stories for my daughter. She was my audience. And she wanted me to write these stories about things that happened to her. So I wrote a lot of stories about that, about, you know, kids that were doing similar things to her. And then I was like, oh, I really want to tell her about this friendship that was really important to me. And then these disturbing events that really changed me a lot. And so I first wrote it just for her. And it was just like a memoir, you know, like my story, because I'd been writing a lot of creative nonfiction. And so that was just a natural. And, you know, so then as time went on, I became more invested in it and was like, I want to write this for a broader audience. I want to write this. And then also, I'm not sure memoir for this age group is going to work because I'm not famous or anything. I'm just telling a story. And also, if I make it fiction, I can make stuff up, you know, so I'm not just tied to the truth. But Annie herself, you know, I feel like the process of writing Annie was a really fascinating process of getting closer to who I was when I was that age, of remembering things about, you know, what the world felt like to me. So in this case, I think Annie was really close to me. In other cases, I've had characters that maybe I had a character in my YA novel that's based on my daughter and a little bit of me. She's kind of a combination of people. You know, and I've written characters that are totally not me at all and kind of composites of a lot of different people. But Annie's pretty close to my heart.
Okay. Great. Any chance that we're going to see a sequel and learn more about Annie in the future?
Possibly. I've thought about writing a sequel that actually looks at some events from her friend Larissa's point of view. Because, you know, Annie is so embedded in her own point of view. She can't always see what's going on in her friends' lives. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot going on with Larissa that Annie just can't perceive. So I thought, oh, you know, I mean, there's 4 main characters and I could conceivably write something from each of their points of view.
Yeah. And what a good, I can imagine how good the conversations could be if all four of those books were out there and a family read them together. And if nothing else, it'd be just a great reminder that we all look at life through different perspectives. And
Exactly. Yeah.
that might be why we have a different opinion, not because I have horns and I'm, possessed by a demon.
Yeah, right.
Tell me, please, Nancy, where can we go to find out more about fires burning underground and find out more about you?
So my website is nancymccabe.net. And of course, my book is available at all the online booksellers. So
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Fires Burning Underground. It is the new middle grade novel from our guest, Nancy McCabe. Hey, Nancy, thanks so much for being with us. And thanks for maybe going to one of my shows a few years.
it's a great coincidence. Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. My friends, if you have ever thought about owning a business that's fun, rewarding, and makes a valuable contribution to kids' education, well, Brooklyn Robot Foundry is calling your name. I recently met Ginny Young. She's the founder of Brooklyn Robot Foundry. And let me tell you, she is incredible. Her passion for getting kids excited about STEAM, that's STEM plus art, it's contagious. I'm telling you. This isn't your average kids program. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is all about hands-on, screen-free STEAM fun. These kids get to build a different robot each class and take it home with them afterwards. Kids love it. Parents are raving about it. And now you can own a franchise and bring this incredible experience to families in your community. Now, this isn't your typical franchise. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is a mobile, flexible business with a deep curriculum that's making a real impact in schools and communities around the country. Franchise owners get a proven curriculum, full training, and support from a passionate team. So what are you waiting for? Please visit bit.ly/RobotJed. That's bit.ly/RobotJed. And let them know you heard about it on Reading with Your Kids. Join us right now from Washington, D.C. Our guest is returning to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called The See You Soon Spice Box. Please welcome back to the show, Pamela Ehrenberg. Hey, Pam, how are you?
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to have you back on. I love the title, See You Soon Spice Box. It just brings up all these images that are really sweet and familial.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So tell us about the book.
Sure. Well, I guess Spice Box is a reference to the Jewish ceremony of Havdalah, which takes place at the end of the Sabbath. So just as Saturday afternoon is transitioning to Saturday evening, it's the end of the Sabbath. And there's a short little ceremony that people do at home that involves a spice box. So the see you soon aspect is because the main character in this book, who's a kid named Silas, connects with his great-grandmother over video conferencing, much like we're doing for this conversation. Since they can't be together in person, they connect that way every week and celebrate Havdalah together. So it is, about their family relationship, and that idea of saying "see you soon" can be something, if kids who are feeling anxious or grown-ups who are feeling anxious, or all of us, I think, really benefit from just knowing, we might be saying goodbye for now, but it's not really goodbye, because it's we'll see you soon, whether it's a person or a special day or whatever it might be.
Well, I love that. I've shared here on the show that my grandmother, growing up, lived just a few doors down from my home, and we were best buddies. And not just when I was a little one. The friendship grew even more as I was in high school and became an adult. She would ride in the back of my motorcycle. We'd go to see the WWE together, and it was just great fun. And I think those intergenerational friendships are so very special. And so I love celebrating books that celebrate those intergenerational friendships. They're really important.
Now that sounds like you may have a book that you need to write about you and your grandmother on that motorcycle. I would like to see that.
Yeah, I don't know if it would make for a picture book, but she was a trip. I remember when she met my beautiful wife for the very first time. The next time I saw my grandmother said, "Man, her legs go all the way up to her neck." I said, "I guess you like her, huh?" And so, those, those friendship, because a friendship with a grandmother or great grandmother or special aunt or uncle, they're very different than the friendships or the relationships between a parent and a child or a primary caregiver. I think there's less pressure. The grandparent, the older person, can be a little bit freer. The stereotype is the grandparents spoil the kids, but I think it's more than that. I think it's just more, I don't know if there's not as much on the line, not so much pressure. It's like, hey, yeah, we can just be together and we can have fun.
That's so true. And I think kids also get that benefit of somebody who knew their parent maybe as a child and as a younger person. I think it kind of levels the playing field for everybody that, we're all just figuring out life. It's not that the parent is some kind of all-knowing anybody.
Right.
I think having parents there and great-grandparents.
Yeah. Maybe that's one of the reasons some parents don't encourage those intergenerational friendships. They don't want the parent to dime them out to.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe, I guess the people that I know, I think, distance can really be a challenge sometimes. And though I would never say that the pandemic, there was anything like a silver lining, I think that the increased comfort level with these kinds of ways of being together, I think technology kind of helped all of us meet the moment in some ways, and to be able to then extend beyond that and keep communicating this way, I think helps everybody. Yeah.
You're right, because there were lots of people very content to not know how to use Zoom, to not know how to use meetings or Skype, and it's like, I don't need that stuff. You guys do that over there. I'll call you if I need it. And then suddenly it's like, oh, we all need to use this so we can work or teach or stay in touch. What was it that inspired this book?
That's a great question. I had been playing for a while with an idea of some sort of picture book about Havdalah. It's a ceremony I've always really liked, just in its simplicity, but also I think in kind of being in that liminal space where you're not really in one kind of day, you're not really at nighttime yet, but just celebrating being in between for some little bit of time has just always spoken to me. And I think, not from a religious point of view necessarily, although, for many people that is a connection there. But, I think this just looking at the ways that different cultures, can experience time and space and family, that I think at least the way the ceremony is handled here, I don't think it's particularly religious in the book. I think it's, just one culture's way of meeting that. And so, as you know, from all of your books and folks that you've talked to, I think that, picture books take a really long time, even though they're short. And I think, so I had played with it for a while, different versions of it. And the idea, at one point I had the see you soon idea of, a kid who was anxious about saying goodbye to his caregiver, dropping him off at childcare, for instance, that the idea of see you soon is a little bit more palatable. There's a more certainty about that coming back. But I had these different versions and none of them had quite stuck or, gelled into a full manuscript. And I think it was during the pandemic that this sort of virtual connections with various family members and special friends, I think, maybe it was kind of me feeling for myself that uncertainty of, we don't know when we're going to have schools and places open again. We don't know when there's going to be a vaccine. It's hard to even remember now, but, there was this time of, we just don't know what's happening next. And, I'm a planner. I like to, have my calendar and know what's going, it was good that, we've had this conversation ready for a while and, I knew exactly when it was going to be. And so maybe for me, myself, even as an adult, just having to, there's uncertainty and there's nothing that we can do about that. I think maybe that kind of helped the story gel in some way that, this was how this great grandma kind of saw that need, in her great grandson and, established that kind of special ritual they could do together.
Yeah. And I like that. I like having as you said, that ritual, whether it's a religious one or a secular one, just like, oh, this is Saturday night. This is the night that we get together for whatever. I've talked many times about my niece who is now in college, but we had a ritual I think it was Thursday, when she was in high school and middle school, we would get together for fries. And just come together, and it was just our time, and sometimes it was great and timely because she had something that she really wanted to talk about, or sometimes it was just going to get together and eat fries and spill ketchup on our shirts. And it was wonderful. And it's funny now that she's in college, every once in a while she'll just text me and say, we got to get together for fries. We have to come together for fries. And I love that. And I've had many relationships, like, friends. Thursday, we have to get together for lunch on Thursday. And I think those are really valuable. And I'd encourage folks to kind of get those things, put them in, create those moments in your life.
Yeah, and it's so great, now putting those puzzle pieces together, just thinking about all the ways that all different books, that reading can be that for a lot of families. And, I know library story times when my kids were little,
Right.
Just the fact that it would happen at the same time each week was actually really anchoring, I would say even more so for me as a new parent than, my kids enjoyed it, but at a time when my world felt like it was turned upside down. My kids didn't know any different before they were born, I guess. But for me, it was a very different world. And just knowing that, Wednesday at 10 a.m. or whatever the thing was going to be, that at least that was set. And then the other pieces could kind of fit in around that.
Yeah. What is it about writing for kids that you love the most?
What a great question. I think maybe I'd have to say it's the chance that in that space in my life, it's okay that I am still the same person I was as a kid. I remember years ago there was a book, I believe by the actor Jamie Lee Curtis, where she went back through the eras of time and said, the 5-year-old is really still the 4-year-old and the 3-year-old and the 2-year-old, and they're all still in there. And I think that's something that I've felt that, I'll have situations in my adult life where I'll feel like, all right, this is kind of just like when I was in middle school and I had to figure out where I was going to sit in the cafeteria and it wasn't really clear and it's really important that I don't spill anything and like, and you know, all that, you know, it's not apparent on the surface, but that's very much what I'm, you know, calling on to get me through whatever the challenges in that moment. And so I think, you know, that chance to be part of a character who's a young person, and recognize that, you know, maybe I've had a few more experiences since that age, but it's not that I'm a whole different person, and, you know, that we can all kind of relate to different aspects of what's happening.
You know, you brought up I hope I'm saying this right, the Havdalah ceremony a couple of times. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that is, what goes on with that ceremony?
Sure. So, you know, and really it's the kind of thing people, you know, some families maybe extend it longer. We often will do it in just a few minutes, you know, to kind of mark the end of the day. But there's a special candle, and I actually on the cover of the book, there's a picture of a candle that's braided, so it, you know, looks different from candles that we would use for other things. And so we light the candle, and then there's a couple of kind of musical blessings that go along with it. So I'm going to see if I get the order right, because there will be people listening who really know much more expert than I am. But there's a sip of grape juice or wine as part of it, and then everyone sniffs from a spice box. So that's where the spice box here comes from, you know, and so to bring sweet smells going forward to the week. And then everyone looks at the candle, the flame, kind of through the almost like the ends of your fingertips. So you see like this, the fingernails, like you can kind of see kind of that diffused light. And then people add songs and, you know, and things as they will. But yeah, just you know, it's traditionally after the first 3 stars appear in the sky. It's how you know when it's time for Havdalah. So that means that it's different at different times of the year. So both for the Friday night beginning of the Sabbath and then the Saturday night ending of it with Havdalah, it shifts as the, you know, sunset times shift through the year, which I think is kind of a nice way, you know, so much. I mean, obviously I love technology. I'm here for the, you know, in the book, people connect through technology, but I think sometimes we're so connected to technology that it's easy to lose that connection with the natural rhythms of the earth that our species evolved to, you know, to participate in. And so I think just to have that awareness of, you know, things start and end at a different time in the winter versus the summer, and that we're connected to all those things happening on the planet.
Yeah, I love it, and I'm obviously this would be a wonderful book for a Jewish family to add to their family, to see themselves positively represented on the pages of a book. But I think any family could really get a lot out of this, to be able to look through the window, to see a little bit of a different culture, and not only to see how that culture is different from ours, but I think more importantly, see how that culture is similar or the same as ours. And, you know, maybe we have a tradition that's not the same as the Havdalah, but it's a little, you know, kind of marking the same thing. So I think that's, it's wonderful. And even, you know, for a family that doesn't have a faith tradition, I think it just increases the understanding that we can have with each other, so that hopefully the kids that are reading picture books now are going to grow up and they're going to be able to disagree to disagree without going to war with each other and not talking to each other, because we certainly could use that these days.
Thank you for sure. And another lens related to that too, that I hadn't mentioned, but and it actually, I don't think it really is obvious in the manuscript words, but the family in the story is a single dad family. So the main character lives with his dad and his brother, and there's a mention of an aunt who has knit him a stuffed animal. There's the great grandma, but that was something that was really important to me as a single parent. Actually, that just that there is this happy, joyful family the child is clearly surrounded by plenty of love, lots of family all around, and just that can be an opportunity too for, I think, some readers to see themselves, some readers to, just glimpse a type of family that amazingly is still underrepresented, I think, in picture books. I had one reader mention too that, also families where, it could be that we don't know that necessarily if there is another parent, if that parent is just not here in the, in this particular moment. Some parents travel a lot for work, different kinds of things. So just lots of chances for different kids and families to see themselves. And like you said, to see others too.
Yeah. I think that's great. Beyond what you just said, what other kind of conversations do you think families could have as they're sitting down reading the See You Soon Spice Box together?
Well, there is an educator guide on that's up on the Carban is the publisher and on their website. So there are some questions and things to talk about with families, families and kids to talk about related to that as well. I think one aspect that also kind of back to that seeing ourselves and seeing others, it's amazing how few picture books there still are where the main character lives in an apartment as opposed to a standalone house. And so one thing to talk about is how much fun and, what do you think you would enjoy? There's a scene in there with a couple of his neighbors where he talks about what it's like being, kind of that in-between idea. He's in between 12A and 12C and, different kinds of in between there. So that can also spark, what are some of the ways, because as you and I know, really all of us are in between in different parts of our life at all times. And so for kids to get a chance to think about that, I think, hopefully it'll spark some fun conversations there too.
Absolutely. And what a neat, kind of like, one of the things I loved about picture books when my kids were young is, that it can, the experience of reading the book together can last longer than we have the book open. So when we go out and I'm thinking like, wow, just that conversation about, I'm in between the car and the store. I'm in between the bread and the cheese or whatever. And just, especially with young kids, I think that they would have a lot of fun with that.
Oh, good. I hope so. Maybe some folks will write in and let you know, and I'll look forward to hearing what they come up with.
Is there a project in the works that you can give us a sneak peek about? I know sometimes authors don't like to talk too much about works in progress, but sometimes they do.
Well, I guess I have a few different projects in various stages of coming to fruition. I am working on, for the first time in a long time, working on a play for adults. And so that is feeling very different and, but at the same time, I think also drawing on some of what I've learned from dialogue, especially in writing for kids. So I'm having fun stretching my brain a little bit. We'll see, kind of in between start and finish and see where that goes.
Did it take you long to kind of get out of picture book writing mode and into adult theater mode?
Well, I guess I've always toggled a bit between picture books and middle grade. So I think when I was on here last, it was the middle grade book Detour Ahead that co-authored with Tracy Lopez, which was an experience of a different kind, I think, co-authoring. So, I think we probably talked a little about that. But so I do tend to have multiple files that are in various states and in between, I guess, at different times. So maybe in a sense, maybe that's almost like my See You Soon, in a sense that I can start working on something and I can venture into something else, but also know that I'll come back. So I definitely have a few picture books that I'm working on. We'll see
Excellent.
where things land. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we should tell everybody where they can see you soon, what website they can visit to learn more about you and learn more about the See You Soon Spice Box.
Sure. Thank you so much. So my author website is just my name, so www.pamelaehrenberg.com. And you're reminding me that I'm going to make sure I get a link to that educator guide, link directly from my website as well. And I am newly on Instagram, so that's been a new venture for me as I'm realizing that, I still have my Facebook author page, but recognizing that, I think I'm a little bit of an in-between age when I want to talk to folks a little bit older than me. I tend to go on Facebook, and folks a little bit younger, I go on Instagram. So, both of those are just whatever the symbol is for the different sites. Pamela Ehrenberg, author.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author of the brand new picture book. It's called the See You Soon Spice Box. Our guest has been Pamela Ehrenberg. Hey, Pamela, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It is always just such a pleasure talking with you. I really appreciate it.
Kindness is quite magical, and respect is magical too. When you travel as much as Jed does, the magic comes right through. But he's not alone in his quest, he's got some helpers in his crew. 3 dogs that help him stage his show and bring it right to you. Real Magic Podcast, it's so much fun in many ways. Real Magic Podcast, tune in and you'll be amazed. Leads the charge as a magician and a bit of a clown. Calvin is a goofy pit bull who never seems to be down. Augie is a grumpy old beagle, or is he really a basset hound? And Daisy is a border collie wiener dog that knows her way around. Real Magic Podcast, it's so much fun in many ways. Real Magic Podcast, tune in and you'll be amazed. Real Magic Podcast, it's so much fun in many ways. Real Magic Podcast, tune in and you'll be amazed.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We also hope that you'll consider leaving a 5-star review on whatever platform you found Reading with Your Kids. And we also really sincerely hope that you will share a link to this episode of the show with family or friends, or perhaps a teacher at your kid's school, or guidance counselor, the librarian at your public library. It really, it can really help them, and it will really help us find new members of our army that is dedicated to helping all families grow closer through reading. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And our website, it's fantastic. It is readingwithyourkids.com. Of course, you just heard the theme song to our new podcast, recorded by Chris Hardy. It's Real Magic. The Real Magic Podcast will be coming your way May 3rd, 2025. So if you're listening to this in 2026, get on over, find Real Magic, and catch up with what's going on with Augie, Calvin, Daisy, and little old me. You'll love it. Your kids will love it too. Talk about what a great thing to listen to on the way to school. Yeah, just a lot of fun. Check it out, please. Real Magic, coming May 3rd. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Nancy McCabe. Please be sure to check out Fires Burning Underground. And Pamela Ehrenberg, please remember to check out the See You Soon Spice Box. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Stella Cheray, Megan Boucher. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.